My name is Boyd Shermis. I'm the visual effects supervisor for the film Speed.
What you're seeing here is a rough move test for the opening credits sequence, where we start at the top and we travel down about 11 floors and we park ourselves where the main title comes and whips in, and then the elevator, the camera rather, continues to move on down. So what we do is we program this with motion control cameras so that we can be an exact amount of time on any given floor.
There's explosions in the elevator shaft. Most of those were done up close and practical. They built the four-story set mock-up on stage. What we're using this shaft for the most part, is to cut into the sequence some of the long shots that they didn't have the opportunity to get in the practical stage. So where we need to see the elevator traveling many floors, 20, 30 floors as it's falling, or as it's falling by us, we use the miniature to capture those shots. Using VistaVision allows me to frame multiple elements up in a flat format. When you're dealing with VistaVision, you're dealing with a negative area that's twice the image size that you would use on a standard 35mm photography for film. But what it does for us primarily, two things. One is it allows us to frame in the lens multiple elements. If we were to shoot a background in anamorphic, for example, it would all be a squeezed image, so that if I tried to reference that image again and line up a new image that will lay on top of it, I'm dealing with a squeezed image, so that it makes it very difficult to get a decent lineup. By utilizing the VistaVision format, we can still retain that 2:3:5 ratio, which is anamorphic ratios, only in a flat perspective. So that as I line up multiple elements, for example, there's a shot where Keanu Reeves is traveling up the elevator shaft, and he will be composited into the miniature. So I've got to be able to line up those two images of both Keanu and the elevator shaft in the lens. And if I were to do that in anamorphic, it would be very difficult to line that up.
It comes a little bit lower, tiny little bit. Okay. How about that, Boyd?
We've been working on a series of shots for the bus jump.
Everybody hold on!
We're doing 3 matte paintings that illustrate that whole sequence where the bus is approaching that gap, making the jump itself, and then landing on the other side. There's a shot where the bus is still about a half mile from the ramp, maybe a little bit more than that, and we're in an aerial POV. So we follow the bus, we pick it up, and we zoom ahead of the bus into the gap. So there's an aerial zoom into that gap, which is happening as a 3-dimensional matte painting. And then there's another establishing shot lower to the ground, which is establishing the gap before the bus arrives there as well. And then our next shot is where the actual jump happens, where you see the bus going, off the edge of the freeway at full speed. And then when it lands on the other side again, our final shot in that sequence is watching the bus land on the other side of the freeway and just barely making it.
This is the original frames that we had to work with. The original footage that they shot live, where the bus had jumped off a ramp and was coming in for the landing. Well, from here we had a matte painter basically remove all the front half of the concrete and put in something that looked like scaffolding and that sort of thing. So this is all matte painting. I mean, everything from here and down and over was all painted in, taken from other scenes or created from scratch. This was actually shot with a static plate. We put in the camera move, and then the shadow was all fake. It had to track up the side of the painting here. Just a lot of debris, and the smoke when it hits all had to be added on. And problems with the split lining, where the bus crossed over a lot of the stuff that we had to replace. Just had to paint that by hand. And just little stuff like the highlights on the edges of the pipes had to go away when it was in shadow, and the shadows that are cast had to go away when the whole thing was in shadow as well. These little subtle things that your eye will see, and then of course the whole camera move. The original plate was shot without any kind of move on it, so we had to put that in as well, reposition it, just to give it a little more life. Well, once we do all this digitally, and it's done at a high resolution, obviously. There's upstairs a bunch of basically very high resolution TV screens that are set up to project light through a piece of film, and it's just like very, very slow motion, exposing a frame of video, but very high resolution video gets exposed onto a piece of film, and then the transport advances another frame and just does it again. So it takes like 2-3 minutes a frame to get it from the computer onto a piece of film.
In the Metro Rail sequence, there was a good portion of that was shot live as well. And what happens is that the train goes beyond the normal service tunnels and into a construction environment. So what we've done is to create in miniature that environment, that construction environment.
This is the largest set we've ever had to do. This set is over 80 feet long. And having to address this incredible amount of set requires a lot of little pieces and parts.
As the train picks up speed and derails, it ultimately slams into a concrete column, splits one of the cars in two, and sends one of the cars up onto Hollywood Boulevard. So that entire sequence there is virtually all miniature. Portions of it are being shot as motion control. For those, you're looking at frame rates something on the order of 4 seconds per frame. And it ranges depending on what the lighting environment wants to be. But as we get into the high-speed photography, we have to scale that for the miniature, which is an 8th scale miniature. Which means to get real-time speed, we need to be shooting at around 68 frames per second. And then to kind of heighten the drama, we then speed the camera up even further on the order of 240 frames per second for some of these shots. So that has kind of that high-speed look to it, even beyond scaling it for its size.
We selected the 1/8 scale mainly because of the amount of equipment that I had to put in these cars. They're powered by 2 1/3 horsepower motors. They have a capable speed of 15 miles an hour. I built these very similar to the way the real cars are built. These are all extruded sections. All the side sections, the roof sections are all extruded. The original cars are stainless steel. We used aluminum and then burnished it. This guy weighs about 150 pounds. And he's going to be doing 15 miles an hour through there, and we've got these cameras right next to the track. The 2 hero cars, which we've already used, we got through. They went through their paces. We derailed one of them, and one of them stayed on the track, and we went around the curve, and one of them derailed. And my concern there was that the power car would also derail because it was going so fast. And if that had happened, it would have turned over sideways and just swept across the entire set. And we trashed everything. It would have still been a great shot, but it wouldn't have been what the director wanted, so we'd have definitely had some downtime on that one. The ones that are made to destroy, you don't feel so bad about it because your purpose is to create the most realistic looking twisting metal and debris and parts the way you would imagine it would happen. I mean, I doubt seriously whether you'd be able to cut one of these cars in half, sliding sideways into a concrete column. I think it would wrap around and that'd be the end of it. But we're actually going to cut it in half. And so what we have to do to design this car to come apart. And when it comes apart, all the seats and all the interior is going to fly out, and it's going to look very realistic, as you can imagine the way it would happen. In the movie business, big is always better.